This week on LTC News, we get a ride in Lowell Police Department's UTV.
Some of these places you just can't take the cruisers through, so this is just better than pedaling on a bike through some of these areas.
The Banjo and Fiddle Contest.
This is our 35th year this year, so we are anxious to have some fantastic talent. Hopefully a few surprises.
And a presidential candidate comes to Lowell.
I think education is our homeland defense, and so as a military guy, I like to say that. And so I was glad to come here with the youth of America.
All this and much more on this edition of LTC News. Welcome to LTC News. I'm your host, Krista Brown. It's unusual for a presidential candidate to come to Lowell, but that's exactly what happened on September 9th when Admiral Joe Sestak, Democratic candidate for president, addressed civics and history students at Lowell High School. We spoke to faculty and students, as well as Admiral Sestak, about the need for young people to get involved in the election process.
We got invited to come here after we'd been asked for brochures. And I told my staff, look, you get these requests everywhere and we want to meet them, these requests. So we sent the brochures and then we got a wonderful invitation to come to visit. And so we were coming up here to New Hampshire, and so we just had an opening in the morning. We reached out and we were gladly welcomed. I was on the education committee as a congressman. And I went to school every week, and so I think education is our homeland defense. And so as a military guy, I like to say that. And so I was glad to come here with the youth of America.
Anybody who had declared, we contacted them and asked them for materials that we could put up in the wall in my classroom. And we got some responses, even some responses saying they couldn't send at the time, but they at least responded to us. And then in August and September, I've been following up with them and inviting them to come and speak. So Admiral Sestak was the first one who responded and said he would come and talk.
Having him here, it's more tangible. It's more like, it's not like this random person who lives in Washington, D.C. This is a real person who's speaking from real life experience. And it's helpful for us to see that.
One of the things I liked the most about him was probably how he talked about accountability. And I think that makes a lot of sense because in politics right now we don't have a lot of accountability. And if you spend that long in the military, you definitely know something about accountability.
Each of these candidates has a story, and his story of why he decided to run came through when he talked to the students. And I think they picked up on that too. So I think that I'm hoping they realize that there's more than just what you might see on TV or in a sound bite to these candidates, and hopefully they realize they have a personal reason for running for such a prestigious office.
And I know I'm a little late, but my ideas are timely. If we don't have a president who can unite this country again, there's no way that will pass the policies needed to move America forward. If we don't have a president that has a breadth and depth of global experience, my 31 years, not just in war and peace in the military, but serving in the White House as President Clinton's Director of Defense Policy, to bring together all the elements of our power as I coordinate the national security strategy, we won't be able to ensure that America's interest become the world's interest of collective good around the world to help expand and safeguard our American dream.
We just recently did a project in class where we actually got to learn a lot more about all the candidates. So I've learned a lot more about the campaign in the past 2 weeks than I have before.
I'm an immigrant, so me learning American history is really I'm learning a lot because that's a different aspect of my life. For those who say that politics is too controversial, I think they just think Democrats and Republicans. They don't see that what they do down in Washington affects us. And I feel like over time with this election, it's finally clicking with hearing what the Democrats and the Republicans have to say, and having people like Admiral Sestak come to talk to us, and us doing projects in school. to learn more about what the candidates want to do. I think that's really important.
We try and teach them how to become better citizens and something that's skills that they need going forward.
Admiral Sestak also talked about his broader vision for America. You can watch the full interview with him on LTC Channel 8 or on our YouTube page. Last episode featured images of a new sculpture that's come to Lowell, Nancy Selvage's Hydro. Hydro pays tribute to Lowell's relationship with our canal system and was given an official public unveiling on September 17th. We spoke to Miss Selvage, as well as Mayor Samaras and Cool co-chair Patrick Cook, about the importance of public art in Lowell.
On behalf of the Cultural Organization of Lowell, I welcome you here today to Utopian Park and today's official unveiling of the City of Lowell's newest public art piece, Hydro. It's been a very long haul to bring this project to fruition. 8 years, to be exact. Well, I'm a lifelong resident of the city, and I've been watching for decades the revitalization of the city, and I know what kind of an important role art and culture has played in the background for that story, whether it's the mill developments, whether it's a lot of the rehabs of the downtown properties that have been going on, the college and the university itself coming into the city like they did. A lot of public spaces needed some tender loving care, if you will, and this park was a perfect example of that. It was an abandoned tract of land, just over an acre. It's not that large a piece of property, but it was something that was going to be seen as central to the development going on here in Hamilton Canal. So the discussions that have been going on for several years was how to bring public art to this location to help beautify the area.
There's a mystique about art making that, you have to be born with a certain talent, but a lot of it is a learning process. I made a quarter scale model, created all the CAD files that cut out the parts for the sculpture, worked with a fabricator in Rhode Island, and it's very dependent on the skill of the fabricator, especially for this piece because all of the structural pipe was constantly changing the direction and the radius of the bend. So you can't just put it through a pipe bender in one way and have it done. You constantly have to inch it in a little bit, change it every few inches, come back, test it.
This art project, what I'm pleased about it, it keeps our history alive on how Lowell evolved. But you know what? Art is history. It reflects the history and the times, whether they were good or bad. And today's art, this art, reminds us, for me, first of all, the importance of the waters that powered the mills. But this wave effect, for me, just shows you where Lowell is headed. If we're going to enhance the quality of life in the city, we have to make sure that we recognize and support the arts. It's as simple as that. If we don't support the arts, anything else you might do just falls short. And if we want to entice companies, major companies, companies that are leading in innovation and what have you, they're looking for a good quality of life for their people who work. And when you have a lot of art projects and people are able to walk the city with the art projects, it helps the creativity, of everyone. And so it just makes for a better city. It makes everybody think.
So we're hoping that this kind of thing will help bring people into an area and expose them to a part of Lowell that they may have never seen. They've probably driven by this hundreds or thousands of times and never realized it was even here. Now with this art being the centerpiece of it, we're hoping it's going to bring some new foot traffic into the area as well.
I want to thank you all for your role in creating a city that lives up to its motto, art is the handmaid of human good. So thank you.
The Lowell Police Department has another important tool to fight crime in the city. The LPD's new Utility Task Vehicle, or UTV, is small, fast, and agile enough to reach areas that are not accessible by standard police cruisers. Officer Ramos gave us a tour and let LTC News join him for a patrol around the city.
about this. So this is probably my third time driving it, actually, personally. The other officers that are working this area have been driving it more. They're more in the downtown area and working this side. So on my side, I'm on the other side. So if I do use it, it's going to be for like the homeless encampments and stuff like that to get in there. It's just another tool. I wouldn't say we're doing so much right now. We have people on bicycles, motorcycles, the cruisers, walking routes. We're pretty much out there. So it's just another way to get out there even more and more visible. But as we're going to go to the river walkway, some of these places you just can't take the cruisers through. So this is just better than pedaling on a bike through some of these areas. Besides, 4 people can fit in here. This is great. See, I haven't gone through this way, so let's see how we can get through this way. See, I can't, as you're going to see, I wouldn't be able to do some of the stuff in the cruiser. I do like the fact that we do have a bed. I mean, Lord forbid we need it, but I mean, you don't know, cyclists, a little accident, whatever, can't get the cruiser out. I'd rather put it in the bag than carry it, you know, a good 100 yards somewhere. And all the festivals we have, you know, when we block off a lot of streets on Merrimack and Market and Palmer. The cruisers really can't get in there at all when they do that. Like if I have to go the roundabout way. So on this, and we have a golf cart that's pretty cool too. But to maneuver around there, like to kind of, I don't know how they were doing it before. Well, actually, I do know the long way. I do the river walk on the other side of the city, in the rear of 576 Lawrence Street. It's actually a nice area, but sometimes we get some funky calls out there. I think it works well in the parks too, like the South Common. You can just go right up the hill.
Folk music enthusiasts were busting out their banjos and flexing their fiddles for the 39th annual Banjo and Fiddle Contest on September 7th. The competition took place in the Lowell High School auditorium and was a full day of family fun and musical heritage.
We are at the 39th annual Banjo and Fiddle Contest at the Boarding House Park in Lowell. We are the Boston Bluegrass Union. We're a nonprofit organization that preserves traditional bluegrass, so we have concerts and workshops and educational events, and sponsor a 3-day indoor bluegrass festival in February.
And we are proud, again, this year to be the sponsor of the Lowell Banjo and Fiddle Contest.
Contact us at bbu.org and look for our festival that we have scheduled for February 14th through the 16th in 2020. The Joe Val Festival, which is a wonderful 3 days of music.
Yes, it's our 35th year this year, so we are anxious to have some fantastic talent, hopefully a few surprises.
In this week's SunSpot, Lowell Sun Enterprise editor Chris Scott sits down with Jim Moriarty, head of the Lowell High School Alumni Association.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Chris Scott, the Enterprise Editor at The Sun. Thank you for tuning into this latest edition of SunSpot. With me this week is the second consecutive guest from the Enterprise Bank and Trust Company. 2 weeks ago, we had CEO Jack Clancy. He was talking banking stuff and numbers and bank expansion. I have with me Jim Moriarty. Jim, thank you for coming in.
Always a pleasure, Chris.
You've been here before. We're going to lighten it up a little bit this week. Jim is going to inform our viewers, and you'll see something in the Sun as well, the latest group of inductees into the Lowell High School Distinguished Alumni Hall of Fame. It is the 16th year, correct?
Correct.
We have 5 more folks being inducted, and you and I were talking a little bit off the air about who is coming in this year. So I'm just going to turn it over to you. Before I do that, though, these 5 folks are going to be unveiled. What's the date of the?
The event is actually October 24th, 1 o'clock at Lowell High School. Anybody that would like tickets, the tickets are $25. You can either call the high school or get a hold of me. It's very easy. But it's held at the high school. The night before we have a social event so they get to meet one another. For the adults. And we also get to meet past honorees so that they can, keep that connection with Lowell High School. And then we have the event actually at the auditorium at Lowell High School so that, 600 to 700 kids can see what these people have achieved. And they used to sit in the same seats that they did. It's an amazing thing. It's one of the most exciting things, I think, and it's probably one of those uncovered gems.
I would agree with you.
But it's absolutely a major impact for the kids at Lowell High.
It's too bad that more high schools can't, high schools, well, in your town now, Chelmsford, they got a big athletic high school Hall of Fame, but it's nice to see non-athletes get recognized.
This is something that these people have succeeded not only in their own field, but they've given back to their community and how they've grown and what you've seen. And as I just gave you the pamphlet, if you look at the previous 15 years, I mean, you've got every category from military to biochemistry, the people that started the Smile Train, Ted Leonsis with AOL, education, the Lowell Sun, Kendall.
Yes, yep.
You start
Kenny
going
Wallace
through that.
is in there, right?
It's absolutely amazing, and they've all came out of Lowell High, so that's quite a story. And it's quite a, you look at the history of Lowell High and all it's achieved. It was the first co-ed and the first interracial high school, public high school in the United States, and what they've achieved is just amazing. And I'm proud of this class as I was the previous 15 classes.
As we said earlier, this is the 16th group. 5 folks get inducted every year. Do you still have a deep pool of candidates?
Always looking for more, because even this year, I think 1 or 2 of them were brand new applicants. I know, or might have been in their second year. But we get these out of the blue. I know Dr. McAdams a year ago was brand new. His nephew sent it to us, an amazing man. He'd be like the Nancy Donahue of California, and he's got a doctor's degree in all he did. But these people have just achieved so much, and some of the stories I'm sure they're going to tell the students are very, very funny. I'm thinking of Bobby Regan's, he tells a very funny story.
Hold on to that. So, in no particular order, I'm
Okay.
going to turn it over to you, and we just have to be cognizant of the time because we have to discuss 5 people.
Okay, so I'll try to keep it quick.
So you go first.
All right. Laurie Laredo Turhan. Everybody
Who's that?
know? Yeah, she happens to hold the seat of the 3rd District Congresswoman in the Merrimack Valley out to Fitchburg, Gardner all the way out to Gardner to Haverhill.
Gardner to Haverhill.
But she's got her start at the Lowell Sun, delivering newspapers as a oldest of 4 girls up on Staple Street. Always been a worker, worked at the Lowell Sun, worked as a waitress at the Owl Diner, answered phone at Cadell and Byers. Those people wouldn't remember that insurance company.
We do though,
She was a very good athlete and a good student at Lowell High School. She was such a good student, good athlete. She got a full boat to Georgetown playing volleyball. After that, she started out at a couple other jobs, but she ended up in Marty Meehan's office, first as a clerk, and she achieved the chief of staff by the time she left.
And we should also note, Jim, pardon me for interrupting, but Marty Meehan is also in the hall, inducted in 2008, right?
Ooh, I'd have to look and cheat at the book, see what year he got in. But also used to deliver newspapers, so maybe there's a Lowell Sun trait to that.
Good for the Sun.
It's great. She's just done a tremendous job representing her constituents in 3rd District, but before that she started a women's owned company, became very, very successful, was traveling the country, maybe even the world as a consultant, just achieved an awful lot for a Lowell High School kid.
Congratulations to Lori Trahan.
The next up,
Next inductee, Jim?
John Haley.
Another DeWallian?
Yeah, obviously. But once again, a teacher at Lowell High School really made an impact on him and said, you've got to get out of Lowell to grow. And he went down to Miami, took education serious versus what he did at Lowell High School. I'm sure he'll elaborate that when he talks to the students. But then he started working in the environmental industry, and he and his partner, Joe, said, we can do this better than they can. So they started Watermark, and it's one of the most successful environmental companies probably in the country. It's grown. He's very, very involved. He was one of the first people involved with Learn, which once again promotes.
Project Learn?
Yes.
Yes.
He was one of the first people involved in that, not only his time but his money. Very involved in the Boys and Girls Club, and there's a number of other things he's been very involved in.
Just sticking with Haley for a second, as you know, Lowell tends to be very parochial, and you could live in the city for 40 years, but if you weren't born here, you're still a blow-in. It's interesting that a Lowell High School teacher urged Haley, and I love your little stories about, they're great, to get out of the city for a while.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on that?
I probably could let him elaborate a little bit more. Would be better, but it was one of those, he said, you know, not saying you're in the wrong crowd, but you got to get out of that crowd. And he got him to go to Florida, to Miami, and he always loved Lowell. And once he took education seriously and did very well.
As opposed to when he was in high school,
Exactly.
probably, right?
Well, a lot of us didn't do well in high school. I don't know about you.
Nope.
But a tremendous success story.
Yep, sounds good. Next one.
Benjamin Lambert. Just an absolute amazing story. He was the 7th of 9 children. He was the president, and I read the minutes of president of the National Honor Society at Lowell High School, class of 1950. Once again, started with his paper route, had 125 houses that he delivered to, and that made the money to help support the family because his father died at a very young age. He graduated from high school. He didn't go right to college. He didn't have any money. There was a teacher, Miss Irish, that helped him out, get a couple of scholarships, and with the money he saved, he was able to attend BU his freshman year. That was going to be the end of the education. But he did so well, he received the Augustus Buck Scholarship that covered the next 3 years at BU. This guy then went on to get his master's in chemistry at Brandeis. He did tremendous. He worked for the companies that we know now as Novartis and Merck. Novartis had a different name back then. But then he was so involved with education that he went back and got his law degree from Seton Hall. After that, he became the first black patent attorney with Johnson & Johnson. So he had the chemistry and the patent law, did tremendous, and always remembered that he got that scholarship at BU. He established another scholarship for a kid in the same circumstances as he at BU, and he's been honored through BU up until his death recently.
Well, he sounds like a real underachiever.
Oh, it's amazing, these overachievers. I mean, and coming up, I think he lived on Kingsman, right up in the Hale Howard area. Just absolutely amazing.
All right, number 4.
Robert Regan is his official, Bobby Regan. The funny story, he graduated same year as I did. We didn't know each other in high school. He was one of those smart, quiet kids. He was a boy officer, very involved. He told his guidance.
I love that, the boy officer.
Oh, the boy and girl officer, they were huge when we
Was that a forerunner to ROTC?
You know, it might have been, but I don't know too many people that went from the boy officer to...
I just love the title.
Yeah. But anyways.
A couple folks who used to work at the Sun were girl officers.
Yes, well, it was very important back then. You know, you from North Andover can laugh. Us from Lowell will take it serious. So anyways, he told this guidance counselor that he wanted to go in production and TV, and she said, you want to repair TVs? So he, with the guidance of the assistant superintendent, Dougie Sullivan, looked for some colleges that he could go to that really were in production TV. So he achieved that. He ended up working for ABC, NBC, CBS. He got recruited to go out to LA, worked in a couple of things there, got then recruited to go to GTE and set up everything. Everybody will relate that to Verizon. Amazing, whether he started MTV and did everything. But then he got called back into education. He's the head, and I should know this off the top of my head, at Ithaca College for the communications thing, and he runs that whole division.
That's where he is today.
At Ithaca College.
Okay, we have about a minute and a half left.
Okay, let me get to
Moving on
Wyman
to number
Trell.
5.
Wyman Trell, who was a teacher of mine, amazing man. Very quiet, very demanding, but if you look back at the previous 15 Distinguished Alumni Awards evening or down in the day, over 6 people mentioned Wyman Trell's name specifically, saying he made the difference in
That's
our
a
life.
great tidbit.
Herb Zarkin said, and Herb Zarkin started BJ's, he brought me up to Bowdoin. This is what you're going to do. Jerry Shatavian, once again, he brought him up to Bowdoin. He started the year up after he became so successful on Wall Street. George Duncan talked about Wyman Trell having the effect. Dee O'Brien talked about Wyman. He put me in line.
Oh, that's cool.
Colonel Bobby Kilmartin, who's a Colonel, JAG, the whole routine, said, Wyman grabbed me by the back of the scruff and said, listen, kid, you're either going to be a punk or you got to start paying attention. He says, get rid of the cigarettes and start paying attention. He says, you got a lot of potential, but you're wasting it doing what you're doing. Bobby says, I've been through all, the Navy SEALs, whatever else he's been through. He says, Wyman scared him, put him in line, made all the difference in his future. Now, everybody just knew Wyman as a history teacher and all that. These people start telling these stories of what an impact a teacher had on their lives.
What did he teach?
He taught me ancient history. It was English history and U.S. history. So,
listening to you relay these stories about the latest 5, Jim, your enthusiasm is contagious. And why are you involved in this? Why do you stay involved in this? You're a 1973 grad, you live in Chelmsford, you work in enterprise. What is it about this particular effort, this organization, that keeps you involved?
It was so funny when it started. Billy Samaras and Brian Martin was talking about it, and I got involved, and I was the head of the selection committee for the first 5 years, and then I got off, and then back on the board. I'm just proud of Lowell High. I'll brag about the graduates of Lowell High and match them against any, not only public, but private high school in the country. I mean, more entrepreneurs, independent business owners, successful people who've done stuff, and we should hear about that more often. And especially the kids and the students should hear about that, because they hear the people that sat in those same seats that grew up in the Acre or grew up in Centerville or grew up, they didn't come from wealth. Yeah. They had to struggle, and they made it. So if that can inspire any of our kids at Lowell High, it's a grand slam. Oh, absolutely.
All right. Well, Jim, thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. We'll be covering the event in October, and in the Sun we'll have a story in the next couple of days about these 5 folks. Thank you for tuning in to the latest edition of SunSpot. Thank you, Jim Moriarty, again.
Chris, thank you very much for having us on, and thank you for the Sun.
Have a good night, everyone.
And that's all for this edition of LTC News. You can find us on LTC channels 8, 95, and 99, online at ltc.org, on Roku in the LTC News playlist, or on Facebook at LTC Lowell. We leave you now with more scenes from the Banjo and Fiddle Contest. I'm your host, Krista Brown. Thanks for joining us.